the workshop. Okay, there you go, folks. Come on over there. So that's not like, is it live? Like, can people join in, or is it just recording?
It should be. I'm gonna turn off the meeting room.
Let me see. So people can just come right in. Enable
I don't know
waiting.
that anybody
Oh, I
is, but-
can't.
So I
The only
tried to
person
make
that
sure.
might is Maggie. So whoever sits up here, can you just have them look? It'll show like Maggie Katz is in the room. I don't know if she's gonna join, but she's the only guest we've had so far. Okay, on to the next one. Text me if you need anything.
Yeah, we'll be good.
I suddenly like feel air again.
You?
Be careful.
Maybe we could like open the window, or if we want to go outside.
I mean, I am like that.
It's freezing.
I felt bad, like Brittany's in here presenting and I'm like, gotta break up, I gotta move. Like, I'm like, when I get cold, I like get sleepy.
Yeah.
And then like Brittany was like, it's Sabrina's presenting. I was like, crap, I gotta wake up.
No, if you start to move around, we'll just be like, oh, she's such an energetic presenter. She brings
Sure.
energy. Oh. Oh no.
Okay.
Oh no.
Maybe. Nope.
You made it worse.
Well, it didn't hit the ground.
I would offer to help, but I'm definitely the shortest in here, so there's no point.
We don't need to read out the fire, but we know what this is. I know. I like got to the end of that meeting, I was choking it. I was like, hold up.
I got more before I came up earlier.
I did too. I got one before the last thing. Which means I'm gonna be really fun later. Oh, the caffeine. Oh, maybe all the sugar.
Well, once we have lunch, that'll help. Which, by the way, is we had breakfast today. Those of you that are gonna be in town, breakfast on a lot. It was really good. It was kind of expensive, but like in retrospect to where we are, like,
Yeah.
isn't that bad?
Nothing's gonna
Yeah.
be cheap here.
Yeah, but it was like bagel sandwiches and they were really good. I would recommend.
high end of Columbus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High Street.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
hip area.
Yes. It's the hipster zone. Except it's been the hipster zone long enough that now it's the rich hipster zone.
You know,
I was gonna say, is Grandview becoming the new hipster zone?
Probably.
Yeah, yesterday when we were out, like there was a few places that we walked into that we were like, no, no, fine.
Yeah.
But like Connor walked in and I was like, Connor, like we're not dressed for this. Like these people are dressed in like $400 outfits. You're drinking, like, can I leave? This is not for me.
I cannot
afford
fit
this.
in.
I can't afford these.
Yeah.
Unless someone's buying.
I
know, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that too. But I just really like to feel that place. Like,
Yeah.
not for me. Okay, I don't think Maggie is in. Deidre, will you just like, help me keep an eye on this in case somebody tries to join, because you can't turn off the footage, but it looks like nobody's gonna join, so. I think we're good.
I'm dead serious though. I do not know how to order at a bar.
But it's been.
What do you even order?
Like,
What do you like? I still would have bought a cranberry because it was the first thing I knew.
You know, I went to bartending school and I just order a Cosmo with extra wine. Like, I know all of the options.
Okay, but
It
like-
doesn't help.
I don't even know what's on the Cosmo.
Yeah, what is-
so-
Yeah, what is
Drink
your
Cosmo,
Cosmo?
but I
It's a
don't
vodka
know.
cranberry with Cointreau or triple sec.
Okay.
It's just fancy glass at the same
Okay.
time.
Well, and it sounds less stupid than vodka cranberry.
So it's
Because I
essentially
feel
like
fine
a
when I order that.
citrusy vodka cranberry.
Cosmo.
Yeah, if you need tips on how to order, I know all of this, which just means I can't make a decision. Tell me what you like, we'll help you out.
You keep a list on your phone of the drinks you like, and
And you feel like that's what I want.
Now, if you're in one of those fancy places that actually has a cocktail menu,
See, that's when I
Look
look
at-
at, those are my favorites.
that's better because they'll list the ingredients, and if you know what they are and you like them, just order that.
Right, that's when it's easy.
And if you don't like it, they're like, oh, well, that was it was our own concoction, so like, we'll get you something else, that's fine. So, yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is a workshop on reintroducing APO in person. I'm Sabrina, I'm the Section 86 chair, so you don't know. And then we're kind of focusing on here, like the past year and a half, we've been online, pretty much all of the chapters have been. So our students have gotten into this relaxed Zoom routine, if they're even participating in said Zoom meetings. Some of you, well, pretty much all of the chapters have people that have joined since that have never been to an in-person meeting. Some of those people might be on exec now, and they've never even been to an in-person meeting when you're looking back a year and a half. So how do we take students back to tradition, back to in-person meetings? And how do we continue to utilize this online platform that we have created to our benefit without leaning on it too much? So I am running this more like roundtable based discussion. I have questions, I have points, but I really want to get feedback from you guys, because that's the way that we're gonna learn best, is to see what everybody has to say. So pre-online times, what were some guidelines your chapters had to keep students focused?
Specifically during elections, they would put cell phones in a basket because somebody texted the wrong thing once. She's now an advisor, by the way.
Mistakes happen, that's fine.
Well, I was in a chapter once and we were, before we banned phones, and somebody sent a picture of a micro mess, and that was the entire chapter's discussion. And it was not APO, believe it or not, it was the other.
Risk management conversation?
Oh, I was risk management at the time. It was great.
So no technology, right?
Yeah,
So
technology,
that's hard. That's
Yeah.
really hard. Yes, especially when we're talking about like going from just technology to not having technology, but it's a huge distraction. Especially if it's bigger chapters. You see people doing homework, right? You have a computer, and what are you doing? Either watching videos or doing homework probably,
Or you're texting on your laptop.
or texting on your laptop. So no technology rules. Again, that may not be for everybody, but that could be coming back to some chapters and getting people used to that. Might be a little hard because they've been doing Zoom, and half your screen is the meeting and half your screen is something else that you're doing. So getting them back into the habit of not using technology. What else?
All the our advisors sit in the back kind of watch. It helps deter them from, homework, whatever, but.
Yeah, so no homework.
Wherever they sit down first, they get shuffled around.
Okay, yeah, getting people shuffled.
Yeah.
So taking attendance, right?
Yeah.
Attendance,
Because
yeah.
that may not have been quite, well, you would think that that'd be easier on Zoom, but even my chapters, I don't know how many of them were actually taking attendance. And tracking them at events, like chapter meetings, because some of them use APO online and they weren't logging chapter meetings. So that makes me concerned that people weren't going, and they're out of that habit of taking attendance, so making sure that they're taking attendance and people are attending the chapter meetings.
That's also a good way to reinforce names for people that you haven't had, like making people stand up, not just say here.
Especially the new ones that you haven't seen for the entire year and a half.
And come to say something stupid at the same time, like, I'm Kathleen, my favorite color is orange.
Mhm.
Getting to know all the new members too.
As opposed to the boring major year.
Yeah.
What's your favorite class?
Okay, so that's a good one. What about brother participation, making them answer random questions?
Poll everywhere's, Mentimeters,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Actually
Yeah.
having conversations rather than just updates.
Correct.
I-
Yeah.
Wait, what
That
was that?
sounds like
Mentimeter, it's another polling software
Ah.
thing. It's like MENTIMETER.
I don't know where you got. Yeah, so.
They like it.
Yeah, polls during chapters, pledges or brothers of the week, stuff like that. That's something I haven't, so OSU has been doing like pledge of the week still. But my other chapters haven't really been doing any like extra focused based things because they're just rushing through,
Mhm.
rushing through the meeting, and I'm actually seeing the online meetings be shorter than they were when they were in person, so it's getting people back used to that extended length while also doing it.
That chapter's gonna take 10 minutes and now it's going to take.
Yes.
Longer.
Yeah.
I know it really helped when we switched at our chapters in school to having an activity with the chapter as opposed to just the meeting, because the meeting could go really fast. But you still wanted people to realize like, okay, no, this is gonna be an hour of your time. Don't expect to leave after 20 minutes. Because now we're gonna do a big game. Now we're gonna watch a stupid video on the lollipop talk from 10.
See, we tried that in like the online stuff too, like having something virtual out there for the next. Well, I gotta sign up, I have to go do this now.
I was gonna say, it's a lot easier to
Yeah,
leave
so it's
virtually
like-
than like
Mm-hmm.
trying to stand up and leave a meeting.
Yeah,
Because you
so
can have
now
the
like
advisor
bringing
at
it
the
back,
door,
it's
like, why are you
why are you
leaving?
leaving now? You're normally here for like 45 minutes.
You are my cat.
And so one of the ways that I've seen chapters do it is they do the updates, and so each
Yeah.
officer does an update, but like between
Right,
each
but then
officer's
it's-
update, there's something. Whether it's brother of the week, whether it's, okay, now we're gonna do a fellowship activity, or whether the historian's gonna do a little trivia and throw candy at people, things like that. So interspersing all of those engagement activities that really are to just keep them in the same room for the
Yes.
hour. Like they won't get all of the information until the end.
Do like sandwich activities, like we kind of do like little ice break, right now in KU over COVID period. They were still able to meet in person with masks and space, so we got them like a big room and stuff like that, 'cause they were very small. But they would do something in the beginning, a little bit, and then meeting, and then do something at the end, you know, like board games or something like that.
And I'm guessing you guys have not seen the Zoom meetings that you've been in the last year.
My chapter special, we have a ridiculous number of advisors.
Gotcha. You can actually attend that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the question becomes, how do we get brothers used to in-person events, the expectations of going to those events? And do we continue to offer online and virtual options instead as well?
And I think it's tough because ideally you'd probably want to go full in person, rebuild the community, and I think having any sort of hybrid meeting is always going to, it's always going to favor the people there. But what I really liked about the Zoom is, I live in Columbus, but I could attend a chapter meeting at my home chapter, or all of the national people can, pop in. So there's definitely a benefit to it. Maybe it's just, and maybe there's a way to use it so that like you have one meeting a year where it's like people on Zoom and you can somehow get them involved, but otherwise probably you're gonna wanna go all in person, I would think.
Maybe
Though I
like
do
one
see the
Zoom a
benefit.
month,
Yeah.
just to be like a break transitioning thing.
Or do we offer both? So I'm not saying just let people do Zoom instead of coming to chapter meeting, because then you've got the issue of, again, they're doing something else. But what about your people studying abroad?
Yeah.
Or, maybe you have chapters like OSU, for example, that's bigger, might have people that are doing fully online course loads somewhere, and join to the chapter. So we have to still continue to make sure that we're adapting to our brothers and have in-person meetings, but maybe still Zoom those meetings for those brothers that can't come. That you're gonna see probably with the larger chapters than the smaller ones, but continue to remember who your brothers are, and continuing to adapt to them. So that's something that like has come out of this. It's really nice, is that your people who are doing online classes can now join an organization, even if they don't live there. That becomes then harder when it comes to credits, because then you also have to keep those in mind, but you don't want to lose brothers either over it. So speaking of credits, I know every single chapter in my section took their credits down when this happened. I'm sure a lot of people saw that. So now, as the advisors and section staff and alumni, we've got to bring those credits back up to what they're used to, right? So that's a hard discussion to have with the exec. Make sure that they know going into the semester, this is what your credits used to be. You guys should probably start proposing to reevaluate your bylaws and take it back up to what it used to be. Because the only reason we took it down was due to COVID and those restrictions there.
I think part of it is like justify, can they meet? Like, are we providing, or, you know, is the chapter providing enough
Right.
time to where these students could meet that? I know NKU did not lower their credits, but were more understanding, like, so essentially you didn't meet your credits, you went to standards, and they're like, well, okay, it was COVID.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
They had so many virtual service, like the free rice, which takes you 15 minutes and you get a half of an hour of credit for service. So I mean, like continuing some of those virtual service opportunities to kind of do the stopgap, especially depending on restrictions that the school puts in place on things.
Absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, it has to be, they have to understand it as being worth their time. So if there is not, whatever the plan is, there has to be a full plan that's minute by minute, 5 minute by 5 minute, whatever. So even if that's, all right, we're gonna break up into committees for the last 20 minutes of this meeting. Because then that also gets some accountability on who's in what committee and everybody can see who's in what committee. So some of that, just offering some of that productive time in a chapter meeting can be helpful.
And with the Zoom stuff, that can create a new, like, small leadership position as a buildup of, okay, you are the Zoom master or
Online
whatever.
coordinator, like,
Yeah.
promote.
Zoom master sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a very easy, like, first leadership step for people that are like really hesitant, because you have very little interaction and planning. You just kind of have to do a couple of
Gotta know how to
things.
do breakout rooms and that's about it.
All right, so we kind of touch base on, you know, we all know we gotta get switched back. Kind of going back to like guidelines, what are chapter traditions that should be brought back? What are traditions your guys' chapters held at chapter meetings or in general?
We'll toast song. But we were very clear with our chapter that they weren't allowed to not sing the toast song on Zoom. It was a train wreck every week, but it was like, we're not losing the toast song.
Yeah, pretty much all the chapter meetings I would get on, they like suddenly have adapted to getting video or doing like a video of somebody singing or I went like 10 people of the 200 of them are actually singing and you know, because they're all muted.
Yeah.
They muted themselves, so getting them back to doing the toast song or flares with the toast song. So like we would spin out at the end of ours. Obviously you can't do that on Zoom. Or
My computer around once. I was on a spinning chair and I literally.
there you go. Or like Rotheta does like a Rotheta rollout thing. So making sure that we're reintroducing those traditions that you guys knew that your chapter did, because some people in the chapter did it and some people didn't. A year and a half is a long time.
More people.
Yeah.
That gives a cool time too for like an alumni to come back, to be like, hey, these are some, I mean, like, I feel like you have to have a discussion beforehand, so that they're not bringing back bad traditions. But like something like the weird rollout things, like those are good things you don't want to lose. But it does give the older chapters an opportunity to kind of stop some like bad traditions that maybe everybody hated, but were still going on.
Or like AGX just claps at the end of the toast song. Like that is so boring. Like I'm glad we do something.
Maybe they can figure out something.
Do a patty cake at least, like. It's better than clapping.
Okay.
Not by much, but.
That's all we got.
AGP just goes shake, shake, shake.
Yeah, but did you say shake, shake, shake?
Yeah.
That's way better than.
Shake, shake, shake. I mean, I don't know, is clap, clap, clap that much better if you're saying clap, clap, clap?
I mean,
No.
if you say clap, if you say clap, it adds an element over this.
Yeah.
Clap, clap, clap.
What are some other traditions?
What, the chop smoothie after
Yeah.
ceremonies.
Ceremonies and chapters, like going to someplace,
Afterwards, yeah.
because the advisors haven't, usually our advisors will like pick the place. If there's enough of us there, and students will always come, but we haven't done that in well over a year, so.
It started that way and then we just always ended up at try.
Yeah.
We tried like 3 other places once, and just failed. And we're like, "Let's try those."
But it's good if everyone knows.
Yeah.
then it's very clear and everyone's invited.
Mhm.
That's not a secret or a cookie.
Yeah, yeah, we announce it.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, I'm going to El Rancho today. Yeah, I'm going to Tanks today.
And making sure that's announced beforehand so that people can plan for it.
Yeah.
Because like the first few times it happened, I could never go, and it's like.
Then you learn after.
They do it every time. Yeah.
Oh.
Like NKU does Pay to Pie. It's one of their fundraisers. They do it, I think every semester, at least every year. I think-
Fundraisers.
Yeah, I think they did do it this spring.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. AJ still did brother auction, but now we have to call it something else because brothers are giving things to auction. Yeah, the school didn't like that.
But yeah, starting like a big
Yeah.
fundraiser of an event thing, like you have a golden opportunity. And Wittenberg's still trying to find theirs, but I feel like some of the bigger chapters have them.
What about like shout outs and announcements from the chapters? At the end of chapter, like giving time for like OSU calls them like snaps. Like
Positive share.
Yeah, stuff like that, where we're sharing,
We still
making
do
sure
that
we're
one.
recognizing.
Yeah, me too.
Some did, some didn't, so making sure you're bringing them back. What are we at right now?
Wow.
Hey.
We've got people that literally haven't been to a conference in
Yeah.
2 years, an actual conference. So that's a huge one because they don't like, we always talk about these sparks that we get at conferences. And these students just don't know what to expect. And there's very few now that are in the chapters that have been to conferences that can talk about their experiences, that can share it. Like Brittany in our last one said that we had like 40 people that attended the virtual conference and you would think there'd be more because it's so much more accessible, but they're not attending because they don't know what they can get out of it. So as alumni, it is vital that that chapter advisors, that section staff are the ones that are promoting conferences or targeting students that they know have attended conferences that can share their experiences.
And establishing it in the pledge class too.
Yes.
We just talked
Yeah.
about it before.
Yeah, because, we've got to get these brothers to the conferences where they're going to get that spark, especially in the next year. That's going to be the huge part because, yes, national, but also like re-getting that spark back into those brothers, and then they'll go back and they'll share, and then hopefully it'll revamp as well. But you just have a huge gap now in those who've attended a real conference, not real.
Question.
An in-person conference. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How possible would it be to like make a hype video for conferences that like they could play a chapter?
That's what I heard.
I
I don't
It's
know
not
how
in-
possible the site
No,
is, but
that's
I feel
Rachel.
like it
Oh,
would.
that's right.
we do look similar sometimes. But we were talking about,
This morning in the national,
Yeah.
we were talking about a national convention this year, we should all try to get like as much video as we can of what's going on and then we can use it in the future of like,
Yeah.
this is what this means. and
Like
this
a
is what
video
we're
of a
doing.
giant toast circle with like people
Yeah.
walking around at like COSI today
Or like workshops too, like people don't understand how interactive a workshop is until you walk in a room and,
doing an
you-
achieve.
yeah,
things are
you
just flying
record
through the
like,
air.
you record a little bit of that so that people understand that it's not just you sitting in tables and chairs. like
It's
watching
not a
the
lecture.
presentations.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, so getting them to understand that and back to that.
Well, and we were talking this morning, I imagine that there will be like some of that coming out of the region. But if you have any photo or video from any in-person conference within the last 7 years, and you're greater than that, we look old. Like, just put those into a montage in Canva and make a video out of it, add some music, and that would be something which your students can do. Like, you give them the photos and the videos and be like, make this look exciting.
Got some good ones from Chicago. 2014.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I mean, you don't want it to be a huge part of alcohol, but like everybody at a fellowship, like cheering or something like,
Is there 21?
If they're 21.
yeah. Or with coffee, yeah, just something. I just feel like hype videos have been a big thing with Zoom
Yes.
Yeah.
stuff, and I feel like if we could actually make one
They're so.
It's a lot easier than just listening to somebody talk about conference, particularly because like the people that usually talk about conference to us, are like the super hype people, they're like, okay, you can drop you in the middle of Alaska and you can make friends in 2 minutes. Like, can I have some like less of that people telling me about conference?
Okay, so what's a huge tradition that we still did online, but not the same? Ceremonies, rituals, right? So totally different online than they are in person. How many people do you think showed up in sweats and a t-shirt?
A
Their
lot.
ceremonies
So many.
offline,
Oh,
right?
At least the bottom half.
Yeah. Or different, like I was on several and people just didn't have their camera on.
Yeah.
Who knew what they, who knows what they were even doing, right? So rituals are a huge thing that are so important to us, that we've got to get them used to going back to in person.
Dressing up and
Yeah.
actually,
Well,
yeah,
you're
we
both
talked
one.
about in the last meeting, a rite of passage. You know,
Mhm.
creating that rite of passage for pledges that are coming in too. You know, that's a significant moment. Like I still remember my pledge ceremony, my initiation ceremony. I know where I was, I know where I stood. I know most of the people who were there, you know.
I mean, watching a candle too get lit, like with actual
Yeah.
fire is so much
Versus like,
cooler
yeah,
than
like
a candle appears
screenshot.
on a screen or the chapters that have used the flippy ones, like seeing a little clip of, oh, when you come in person, there are enough of us. And in a conference, we use real fire.
Yeah.
Well, and having maybe like a rituals team that's not exec,
Mhm.
because inevitably whoever's in charge of the ceremony, like it gets pushed off into one officer and they may or may not know what's in the box. So having a team of people who are there for the whole logistics, they know that there's gonna be enough pins, they know that the tablecloth doesn't have wax all over it, and they're gonna make sure it's clean before it shows up, and on all of that stuff that's not.
Another point on here, evaluating the ritual kit
Right.
before the week of the ritual.
Mhm.
So that you. can
Before the day
see.
of the ritual.
I was gonna say, week is like,
do we
Yeah.
do we have a ritual kit? The day of is like, what's in it?
Yeah, what's
Yes,
it?
yes.
or is it
Where's
in
the
some
ritual kit
graduating
at?
senior's
Where is it?
basement with all their
Yeah.
stuff until they move into an
And
apartment?
I would
Yes.
say that the boxes, t-shirts that are disappear case.
Yeah, so you should
I
be checking in
know
with your
AGX
chapters
has some stuff at
earlier.
the Morse somewhere.
My stuff's out there too.
Probably.
But I haven't gotten to.
I think some like new
We'll have to
apparel
find some of
orders
that
too
stuff.
could be like an energizer,
What
like
was it?
particularly apparel.
Apparel,
orders.
yes.
Particularly like if you could organize it as a section so you can get them cheaper. Like I don't know, some section just did it, that they had t-shirts that they like sent the links like everyone in Ohio.
And those are
To get the
really great
prices down.
fundraisers for nationals.
I was hoping to do one section with one tri-state. Sure.
I mean, it is right, Steve.
So what else do
Oh, I
we
know.
do during a ritual that half our students don't know how to do?
The
The
sign.
handshake.
The sign and the
And the
handshake.
arcade
Well, the
relay or
sign like
relay.
we do in like the virtual
do it
one.
like this.
Teach you how to do it,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
like this, we literally, we need Megan to go around to everybody and push their elbow up.
Yes.
We need to make it everywhere.
I'll get you this
Handshakes.
little thing. Oh my
Just
goodness.
put it behind the
Yeah,
person next
let's
to
do
you.
it.
It'll be okay.
I mean,
So definitely reviewing handshakes with your active members, particularly those that went in the last year and a half, because if they're the one doing like the big brother for the pledging ceremony or the active ceremony, and you're like asking them to do something and they're like, "Oh, you do that?" Part of that is practicing beforehand.
Wearing pins.
Yeah.
Wearing pins.
Reward people for showing up with their pins.
yeah.
Our handshake is so cool, like it actually has meaning behind it.
Mhm.
I have other organizations that have secret handshakes, and they're so lame. They make me sad, and I'm like, oh no, you need to know this one, but I
As soon
can't
as
tell
I-
you. But like, I
Right.
want to tell you how horrible our handshake is in comparison.
I have never shown my husband the handshake because he is not a brother. But as soon as he found out that there was a secret handshake, he went and found it online somewhere.
It's just so cool. Like, so
He's like, I know
it's
it.
like
That's
interlock your fingers and shake hands. It's like, no, ours has meaning. We got the three. we got the
Unbroken circle.
connection.
Most people can't get that.
Yeah.
But we should at least tell them that that's the goal, even if you're
You
a
can't
small-handed
actually do it.
person shaking
Yeah.
the hand of a large-handed person.
Mhm.
The large-handed person's half is at least in close. Focus on this side.
Also part of that is making sure you have enough speakers in advance versus using the same speakers wherever possible. That's definitely.
So question, do they have to be the chapter officers as they are named? Or is it, again, when I was thinking about like a ritual, which speakers of roles have to be that position? Because again, the executives they never have time to think about it, or let alone to read through more than once before but if there was a team, they could literally practice.
Well, in the pledging ceremony, I mean, you have 5 brothers that read the history, that would ideally not be exact. And what happens is we go in last minute, and it is, you do this, 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 and they don't even read it beforehand, right? So
If it is exact, they can at least, practice it with a meeting or e-board meeting before. That's typically what a KU does. Is there, even though there might be a couple days before, but they'll run through it together, at e-board, and then sometimes they run through it before the actual ceremony, make sure, okay, everything's official, everything's good, do we need anything to be replaced?
Well, I can't even tell you the amount of times that I've been at a ceremony and people like read the italicized stuff, where they're like,
Yeah.
light candle now, oh,
Inside.
yes.
Yeah.
Or like there's like a part where like it's religion based, you choose one or the other, and then they read through both of them on the way. That's part of that practicing, especially out of the gate. And with rituals, like we have 3 pledge classes that never did a real in-person ritual. So giving them the option of going through that, if that's something that they're interested in, particularly like the initiation ceremony, going through that in person and experiencing that, might be great, because it's a great way to get them to understand rituals before they're the ones helping with those rituals as well.
Having a chapter meeting where pledges are not, practice the rituals as a chapter. Because
Early
one
on.
of the, early on and regularly, because I didn't really understand the ritual until Brandon took me to, and I heard the same ritual 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
And that's when the words made sense. So having it repeated, and it's just like, these are the things that, even like telling the story, like taking time maybe once a month to just tell the story of the founding.
Yeah. And to your point about not necessarily like having the role be the one reading it. Sometimes you have people that are absolutely fantastic in their role, but they're not a public speaker. And so they're like mumbling, looking at the book. Like that completely takes away the meaning versus if you have somebody like making eye contact and everything.
Well, one thing that NKU does, and they've done this, they made this when I was active in the chapter. And one of the brothers, because we just got tired of, we wanted to make the history more exciting. So whether you have the 5 brothers where they're talking about it, so we did a recording of like pictures where essentially the PowerPoint slide, and we did a voiceover of one of the brothers talking, essentially reading that part and then putting it up. And so you eliminate having to meet those 5 brothers, and they're not just reading from the book. And he had a really great, you should be like a TV person or an actor or something like that. But like, it feels like it's so much more meaningful, just the emphasis that he puts in just speaking those parts in the ceremony too. And then you kind of get to see, like, he has a picture, like pictures, just random pictures from the internet, but where they're kind of pulling in out of that time period of the history, and Lafayette College, they have like that, all that. So it's kind of neat. Also, it helps, if you don't want people reading just through the book, make it a little bit more meaningful.
Well, and it is available as a PDF, which means you don't have to do it in the format. You can literally print out however many copies you need and highlight them. Don't put the set, like decide which one of those blurbs you're gonna do and put that one in there, not the other one. So like getting outside of the book, I know you also had binders.
Yeah, they have binders.
So they were reading out of binders, not the little booklets.
Yes.
Because they inserted, I think, little things that were particular to their chapter into the ceremony. Although I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do that with the national.
Not
but-
so mentioning. If you're doing like.
I mean, there are parts that like are specific to your chapter though.
Yeah.
You have to know,
Yeah.
or like the part where you have to say when you're founded and somebody's like, "Oh, it's not in your.
Right, we write that in.
Yeah.
In all of our books.
I mean, there's a plan.
However. Okay, so we know what the traditions are, right? We know how rituals should be run. We know what they should be doing in chapters, but how do we as alumni get them back to normal?
Wait, one more quick thing about rituals too, is having people like dress for them,
Mhm.
like not like enforcing the whole no jeans thing, like
Mhm.
putting a step up.
And proper location.
Yeah,
Mhm.
particularly like a lot of Wittenbergs towards lately I've seen people in jeans in all the pictures, and it makes me die a little. inside.
Like, they also need to request a room with shades on the windows, and that people can't just walk past.
Hey, a checklist.
Yeah.
A checklist of like things to do before ceremony.
Yeah.
In case
Reserve
you
the room.
forgot.
In case you forgot, reserve the room with, no windows or windows with shades. Make sure it can get dark
Cover the
enough
shades.
to where you can light the
Practice
candles.
which-
Can't,
Like, if your light thing is electronic, practice which one you need to do.
Yes, so we could give them a checklist or work on one with them,
yeah.
but BJ's not going to sit there and do this for them, correct? As alumni, we have to continue to make sure that there's that the students are doing what they need to do and that they don't get used to us doing it for them. So that's part of the challenge that we now face. We know what needs done, but we've got to get them back in the routine of doing that. Same thing with events. We know that they need to start planning in-person events, but we're not gonna plan those events for them. We can give them ideas.
There's so
We can't
much
plan it.
online already with just the standard operations. Like, this is what this officer does, this is how to plan a service event, and just reminding them that those resources exist.
Providing them
Well, they are
resources.
advisors that you are a resource to them too, one of the things I explained to some of the advisor chair, I explained to all of our advisors, we like, if you're not present, they're not gonna know you. So you need to be present in order for them to know you, in order for you to help them.
And not just when something goes wrong.
Yeah, not just when something goes wrong, a lot of times, they'll reach out to me and I'll be like, well, I'm not an expert on this, but I want you to reach out to Josh. Here's his number, here's his email address. Feel free to CC me on it if you want to, or if you don't feel comfortable, I will, introduce you to, I'll say, hey, they have a question about this, could you, chat with them? We have a lot of that, because like Josh is more of our financial person, our legal expertise, and John Jack's more of our service person. Lizzie more of our marketing person. She has marketing background. Allie's still new, but she has great ideas because she's from a different chapter. It's we're all from, all the advisors except one are all from, well, except two are from NKU. So,
We're
yeah.
doing our advisor rounds. We're doing advisory on something.
So with advisors and like just volunteers, I think instead of just giving them a list of names, like a recent picture with the name.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I would
and-
be far less scared to approach
Especially someone-
Gabby than I would be like Brittany, because she just looks,
Right.
she's older and more intimidating looking.
Yeah, well,
She still looks like she's in
and so like
college.
highlighting your advisors and not their professional headshots. So like
Yeah.
one of the pictures we have for Tommy is like him at a nationals doing like kind of a thing. I mean, yes, he still looks like their dad, but
My favorite
Cool
shot I
one.
had of me was wearing a cone at sectional on my head.
It's also less intimidating too.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, when I first met JKO, like he was always in a suit. And then I think I was up in I think it was Chicago maybe. I was up in a suite here. He's wearing jeans and an APO shirt. And I was like, he's so much easier to talk to. And then,
because we just like highlight your alumni, your advisors as brothers. Because when the students know that the advisors know what it's like to be a brother, it helps a lot.
Also attending exec meetings,
yeah.
getting back in touch with your exec, and maybe really like having one-on-one meetings with your VPs, particularly those that are new and that haven't necessarily planned in-person events. If BJ's great with fellowship and Laura's great with service, maybe they should be reaching out to those chairs and saying, hey, like, can we get together and meet and just have a conversation? I want to hear what your plans are for the year and what I can do to help you. So having advisors that fit certain roles and helping them, like helping the students in those roles, meeting with exec early in the year to talk about requirements, what the plans are for events.
Maybe a Zoom meeting before you get back to campus so that
Yes.
you can talk about recruitment, because that happens the week they all get to campus.
Yeah, so definitely starting early with this stuff, not waiting to see where the chapter goes, because I think that it's all there, like they got the ideas, but it's going to be a hard tradition for them. And making sure that we are present to help them in that tradition and getting it in their head early. Hey, you gotta go back to in person. What's the plan? Or hey, you're gonna be holding a ritual in 2 months. Get that kit.
What's your risk management plan for COVID?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you actually paying attention to the restrictions and guidelines from the institution? Because
Mhm.
guaranteed they're different.
And
than
they were from last summer.
Yeah, like they're different than they were last month. They're different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so who's in charge of that?
Who's
Who's going to consistently monitor that?
Do you have to have a staff member at things? And if most of your advisors are not staff members, then that, you gotta figure that out. And you gotta get a staff member
That will
Can,
actually
like
come
on
to
their
things.
calendar more than 2 days out.
Yeah.
Can an advisor
Yeah.
that's not
Right,
from the university attend
Right.
chapters?
that's the thing.
That's gonna be my thing.
So trying to figure that out.
With recruitment, it could be a cool like inter-chapter relation thing to like pair them up and have them practice recruiting each other.
That's
Or
good.
if you have alumni in the area, to bring in the alumni to do it.
Mhm.
Just, you know.
Make them
Recruit your
recruit
alumni.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, because if you can recruit like an 80-year-old lady, you can recruit a college
We have 80-year-old ladies.
student. I'm thinking
I
this
thought all of
idea-
our women were under 60.
This idea
Minimum.
came from my social link one, where like the
Gotcha,
entire
gotcha,
alumni
okay.
association is me and a bunch of 80-year-olds.
That makes more sense. Thank you.
At which point, I'm trying to get younger people, but right now, I've got like 70 grandmas.
Yeah, sounds accurate.
Great.
It's like, I thought we only had like late boomers.
Yeah.
Women, but we have plenty of different dudes.
Yeah, so what I'm really trying to get here is that we can't do the job for them, but we've got to provide them with those resources, let them know that we're here. And I think this semester is gonna be a little bit more of being more involved, reminding them of things, because they will not necessarily remember, like they're going to need that reminder to get back into old habits and what those habits and traditions were. So we've definitely got to be present, and part of that could be, if you're an advisor, sitting with your advisor staff
Mhm.
and saying like, who can attend what meetings? Like, are we going to be covering all of these? Particularly in the beginning, like, are we gonna be there?
Setting expectations too for advisors, you know, when I first was brought on an advisor, you know, John Jack's like, this is my goal. My goal is to attend one meeting and one board meeting every month. You know, I was like, I feel like that's reasonable as an advisor. That's, you know, you don't necessarily have to do them all the same week, but, you know.
Right.
Spread it out, and, you know, sometimes there was a point where we had like, it was pretty rough for a minute, so we needed an advisor at every meeting. So like, as an advisor chair, I said, okay, I got this meeting, I can be at this one, can someone be at this one, can someone be at this one? And just kind of organizing it for that month and just kind of redoing that, just as to support and a resource in person there or whatnot, or even online too.
And to see how they're interacting with one another.
Yeah.
So like, even making a point of, if you go to an exec meeting, anytime they ask you a question, you put it back on them. And so like, you're not giving them any answers the entire time, but you're able to see how they solve problems. And so like, for instance, at AGX, we typically don't have advisors at exec meetings, but it's gonna be something that I suggest that we do for the next year. Because of the changes, and them having to have interacted virtually, how is that gonna translate to in person? And that's also a really quick way to see what inter-exec challenges are brewing,
Because they're all.
because inevitably, like,
Yeah, because they have not been in person, so they're used
Yeah.
to this computer divide between them. It's not going to be there
if they're in
anymore.
person, they're all gonna start dating again.
Well, that's.
Back to dating APO workshops, guys.
Yeah.
Am I the only one concerned about like actually being able to get a hold of students to respond to you? Going into this whole like, we
Yeah.
want to talk to them thing?
I've had an issue with those numbers.
You're certainly not alone until like, they actually get on campus, like, getting them to respond before they get on campus is always a
Yeah,
challenge.
it's a struggle right now with all these.
And if you
If
don't.
you can get the
show
president-
up at that first meeting.
Yeah,
And hunt down your person?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I can do that. Hope it terrifies me, but I can do that.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, like, this is when I'm free, like, give them as much detail so that they don't have to make a decision. Because our schedules are always gonna be more weird and finite than theirs. So just saying, and even like, advisor office hours could be another thing too, even virtually of, you know,
Yeah.
I'm going to be here this time. Actually, the other thing I wanted to do, which I didn't do in the spring, was have an advisor host a fellowship event. So like, I'm gonna try and host like a weekly craft something like knitting. And because people like want to learn those skills and I can teach them those skills, but also if they just want to like come and color a page, but just be together, doing some of those focused things, but with the presence of advisors. Again, building those relationships.
All right, so we've got a few minutes left. I just wanted to save a little bit of time at the end for us to kind of brainstorm some good in-person events that can also maintain social distancing. That because you have to remember that there's going to be students that aren't super comfortable being in settings where they're in a room with 100 people or doing stuff like that. So what kind of events can we offer that would be good events for this upcoming year that can be in person but can maintain social distance, or can be in person but can also be online?
Coloring.
Okay.
Sorry, she
Color
said that, and
coding,
I'm like, coloring is a very underutilized thing.
Mhm.
Because you can easily work in like little mental health tips. It's great for conversation.
Or like
And it's
trivia,
Trivia.
It's very cheap.
bingo, family feud type things.
Yeah.
For
Go ahead.
service, something my chapter in Pittsburgh always did, we would do tree planting stuff, volunteer with the city and plant trees outside.
You dog toys. Ours did that virtually, but you could easily. I'll move us in this corner, you can go over here.
Well, and that's one that you can do where people can get those resources virtually, but we can also have them at an in-person meeting. So part of this, like we named a lot of inside one, is booking the right room.
Yes.
We need, if we're gonna have 40 people here and we want to maintain social distancing, this is not the right room.
Yeah.
So knowing where you're having it, and if that means limiting the amount of people who can attend, like that needs to be figured out beforehand, not when they start setting up.
In person, and you can offer virtually too.
Mhm.
Book the rooms before you know what you're gonna do with them, because the rooms will already be taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, if
Especially
you
the
know
bigger
how many
rooms.
people you have and how many people, like if you wanna do an event where you're, the half the chapter shows up, then once or twice a month, book a room for that, even if you don't know what you're gonna do with
Yep.
it.
But you know you'll need space.
So when possible, outdoor-based stuff as well. I know you mentioned tree planting,
cleanups.
park cleanups,
Yep.
hiking.
Cornhole tournament.
Photo
Yes.
scavenger hunts.
No,
We still have
not
one of those.
scavenger.
Not,
Oh,
Not scavenger.
seek and find.
Seek
Yes.
and find, there we go. We still
There
have
you go.
one. I forgot.
Yes, but picnics, you go to a park, people can spread out at a park. Farmers markets, going to those, because people can spread out there. Drive-in movies, you guys, like here in Columbus, we have a drive-in movie place, and like people could come with multiple cars and you guys could all park next to each other. Campfires, cookouts, or if we're going out to eat, trying to find restaurants that offer outdoor dining. I know come like December and January, that's not gonna be the easiest option. But currently, like in August and September, trying to find those outdoor opportunities as well. to get
Going
them.
into like October though, keep in mind we do need some in-person events, because like allergies are really high.
Indoor.
Indoor
So,
events,
like,
yeah.
I would only be able to do like one outdoor event a month without dying.
And before October, like I need an umbrella,
Yep.
cause I have to be in the shade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I just keep a balance of like a couple,
yeah.
because outdoors better for COVID, but just like. a couple
Right,
So that
yeah.
you can't have.
Well, and the goal too is to
balance.
offer a variety of events that people feel comfortable with, because there's some people that are gonna feel comfortable being in a room with however many people and don't, I don't know if don't care is the way to put it, but
Aren't as anxious.
are not as anxious
Yeah.
being surrounded by that many people. So yeah, knowing who your audience is. And part of that is also being willing to work with them. I know a lot of you guys have like a lot of chapters have like a standards or like a risk management or somebody who it keeps track of, well, membership usually keeps track of what they've done, but somebody who would then be in charge of why are requirements not being met and making decisions on that person, and if it's related to, COVID and anxiety, beyond just them using that as an excuse. Like maybe putting something in that allows them to come earlier and say, hey, like I cannot, like I don't feel comfortable coming to in-person events. And working with those people early on versus waiting to the end of the semester too.
Yeah, I think that ties back into the risk management thing.
Or it's also with that, if it is actually an exciting thing, not just an excuse.
Come to my diversity workshop. I have thoughts.
Cool, yeah. Does anybody else have anything that, any other thoughts about going back to in-person or concerns that they have with their chapters?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is paying attention to what the institutions are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And as advisors, I think it's critical that we do that.
Yes,
Because
students may,
Yeah.
giving you like 5-month outdated information,
and
or they're just
being-
not paying attention.
so being proactive with the advisor, talking to wherever your student works office is and say, no, tell me what this actually means. I need to not do the game of telephone through 5 students before it gets to me. And just be really clear and ask the questions that if the student asks it may come out wrong or whatever, like asking, can a non-staff member come to this thing? What are your expectations around vaccinations and all of those things?
And that's, I think, one step where like being that in between is okay for an advisor
Yes.
and alumni to step in. Cause
it's more
reading through all that
information.
legal mumbo jumbo crap,
Yeah.
you have to read enough for school. You don't want to read more.
Well, and it's not even so much to like be the translator, but to have the information directly from the source so that when your students have a question or can we do this, you already know, or at the very least, you have a connection to the office to whom you can ask. Because we've had some things where I'm like, that's not what you should have asked. And that's not what that person would have said in response to that question. I'm gonna go talk to that staff member. And I'm like, let's have a real conversation.
I know I had to fight pretty much for NKU for allowed, because it like, technically the rule was if it was below 50 meetings to be allowed, and I was like, there's only like 10 students. And, I made it very clear that if anyone even felt a hint of sick or anything like that, to not come and just do virtual, So they finally allowed it, but I think there was an event that they posted on the student work website where they reached out to me and they're like, oh, they can't do that. I was like, okay. I was like, I didn't know anything about it.
Well, and that's another, so like one of the things that some schools have are these involvement management software. And so being familiar with that software, know which advisor is getting what kinds of notifications. And again, like one of the advantages of having worked there is that when it says this, I know it means that, and this is the person, I'm like, gotta talk to that person.
Wow, that's like, during that whole,
Like, don't word it as brother auction,
Yeah,
yeah.
use it or we still do that. just-
Yeah. brotherhood auction, how about that?
All right, well, that's all I got for you guys, so thank you for attending. And it is lunchtime. It's actually like slowly starting to warm up in here, which is
Yeah, it
nice.
feels a lot better now. I guess you're like cleaning it up or trying to do something. I think I think
I'll eat all my
it's much better.
It wasn't that easy.